this is actually the culmination of everything that I've been working for the past 25 years in my like skating career. And like, what if I don't do it?
And it's
And
all
like
based on how many minutes? Like what
four
is this?
minutes,
4
4 minutes,
minutes. Your
four
entire
minutes.
career and all your training is this
Yes.
4 minutes. Have you ever faced so many barriers to entry that you begin to doubt and question following through with your dreams? On this episode of Navigating No, I sit down with my friend and Olympic figure skater Jean-Luc Baker, who has spent his life on the ice, overcoming incredible challenges to achieve his dream of becoming an Olympian. Jean-Luc's story shows us that even in the face of setbacks and injuries, success is within reach when you trust yourself and embrace every challenge as an opportunity for improvement and growth. Get ready to hear from an Olympian and one of my greatest friends, Jean-Luc Baker, right here on Navigating No. Jean-Luc, thank you so much for coming on today. I know that your schedule is like super cool because you're such an awesome Olympic ninja. But I'm honored that you came on. I have known you since I believe you were 8 years old, and since you're only like 15 now, no, I'm just
Get out of here.
I mean, we've known each other for a long time. I was lucky enough to be your personal trainer and your strength coach off ice. A lot of people always say that. They're like, "Oh, did you teach them on the ice?" I'm like, "No, I did not. That's not my thing." Even though you guys did get me out on the ice, I think once with
Yeah.
skates. But that's so you have gone through a complete journey of your life. You started skating at such a super young age with your parents both being Olympic athletes. And I would love for you to tell us about your journey and how you kind of got started and where you're at now.
Oh, of course. I mean, first off, thank you so much for having me be a part of this. I think it's amazing what you're doing, and I always back everybody's projects and things that are close to me. And as you know, you've been just like such a huge impact in my career and my life, from not only just personal strength conditioning coach, but also like as a mentor and even older brother at times. So I think that like first, this is just so cool to be a part of this. And yeah, definitely did start skating at an early age. I was like got on the ice around 2 or 3 years old. Moved to the United States from England with my parents. Obviously, didn't decide to do that one by myself. And then made that move and just kind of was like around the rink all the time. And to keep me out of trouble, my parents kind of threw some skates on me. So I would just run laps around the rink to burn some energy. Cause if not, I was upstairs playing the video games. And then, like, long story short, realistically, that's when I started taking skating a little bit more seriously. And I think my would still go home and have so much energy. So you came into the picture, and my parents really wanted to just like kind of build a stronger base for me. And that's when they, I think, fell in love with your training style, your mentality, your values, and all of those things. And I think that they thought that you would be an awesome just role model for not just me, but the skaters in the facility that they train. And it's been so cool to just like have my experiences always kind of tie back to just like different things that we've experienced or lessons that you've taught me about like don't quit boy and all those things. Like, I think that I'll never forget those moments. And I think this is so cool, and just thank you so much for having me be a part of this.
Absolutely. I think back to being asked to be the strength coach at the arena. And I remember your dad told me, I went up and asked him, I go, how hard do you want me to push these kids? Like, do you want them to be Olympic athletes, or do you want them to just be like a good athlete? And he's like, no. And I would butcher his accent because it's awful, but he was like, no, you hurt them, Blue, hurt them. And so I think I gave the kids so many calf raises that they couldn't walk. And your dad
Yes.
told me, he pulled me aside. He goes, maybe a little less. There was too many tears this time. So then I brought it down just a little bit. And it was just that it was such a fun experience because, um, like you, my martial arts instructor saw potential in me and knew that I
Hmm.
wasn't just there just to train. Like
Yeah.
there was something behind the intent that I was going after in martial arts because I was so passionate about it. It was part of my blood, right? Whether it was
Hmm.
attaining the splits, whether it was getting my black belt, whether it was becoming an all karate champion or all collegiate team, it was like it was something that I wanted to do. If karate was in the Olympics, that would have been a goal for me at that time,
Hmm.
right? And so it was like, oh, and I saw that with you and a couple of the other
Hmm.
kids, but it's like I could see this different drive and passion when you trained. And so when
Hmm.
I would say things like, because we all speak differently, right? And I can
Yeah.
pull something from somebody else as a coach. What is your love language? What is going to get you? What is your currency to get you to do 50 nonstop push-ups without throwing a tantrum, right? And it's like
Right.
your language was pushing you and saying, move, boy,
Yeah.
move. Right. And it was just
Yeah.
like this natural drive that was your trigger for you
Yeah.
and making fun of you. But it was always
Love
like
it.
you had that natural intent. And I could just read that. And you can as
Hmm.
a coach or as a trainer, I could read that with certain people. And you were always that driven kid.
Hmm.
But when you did that, did you always set a goal? Like, were you like, I am going to be in the Olympics? Like,
Hmm.
I am going to do that. Or you were like, I'm going to see how far this takes me. Can I make a career out of it? Can I do coaching myself? Does it keep me out of trouble off of the video games, even though I don't really think you did that? It's like,
Yeah.
what was the goal roadmap for you? And when did you know that?
Well, it's so interesting because I think it was always ever changing. And I think that what I loved so much about skating at first was really just the opportunity to perform. Like I loved hamming it up and loved just doing shows. So I think that like at a young age, I think around the same time we started working together, like 8 years old, I was doing like a club show and my mom, who was my coach as well at the time, put me in the like the older boys number. So they're like 14, 15, 16 years old. And I was this young kid. We did like a grease lightning thing. And I just like loved the attention of that. So, I mean, that then triggered me realizing, okay, I love doing this and I love what I can do with it. So then I was like, I want to compete more so I can be better. And initially, I didn't love competing, but I loved finding the best version of myself and like being in this more opportunities to perform is like what I leaned into. It wasn't until I was maybe like 13 years old when I started skating with one of my first partners, Joylyn Yang. We started becoming like successful very quickly. And I was like, wow, this is like really cool. I didn't love, again, the feeling of competing, but like maybe it was the recognition, maybe it was the opportunity to perform. And like when I was doing something I loved, performing at a high level and then getting recognition for that. I mean, it's amazing. It like can dig into some different deep holes of like people pleasing of its own sort to an
Mhm.
extent when you get into it later on. But I think then that like led me to the next step of like realizing, oh my gosh, this is like so fun. I get to start traveling the world at a younger age. I'm like being seen in my school more, being an only child. I got to like again connect with new people and people were seeing me at a different level than just like a figure skater. They'd see me as like, oh wow, you're actually pretty good. You're in the newspaper, blah 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 blah. So it was really interesting for me because that was like starting to springboard, and then I realized I had started really loving what I was doing. And it was really cool because I think that I was really fortunate as like a kid to be able to get to spend so much time with my parents.
Mhm.
I know with parents with work, like you see them in the morning and you see them at night. But for me, I would see them in the morning. I'd be able to train with them. They'd be training me essentially. I'd go home. I'd come back to the rink if I wasn't going to school. Like I'd go either go to school, come back to the rink, and then be able to spend my evenings with them and then go home. So like it was like a blessing and a curse in its own way. But that was another level of like, wow, I really love this. But then in terms of like my goals shifting, my mom had gone to the Olympics in 1988. And I thought that was something that was so cool because she'd always tell me stories about what that was like. And I think that it was something that I wanted to, I think, find a new level of connection on with her. Like, because we had so much in common in terms of personality and whatnot. But she was my coach after all. And she was also my mom. So there was like kind of a different double hat that was always being there. And I think that if I believe that like, okay, if I do this, then there's like another level that I'll be able to like quote unquote unlock with her. Um, and I think that like when I was 17 years old, there was like a decision to be made after my partner Joylyn at the time retired, that I was either going to start moving on with my life and not compete anymore. Or I was going to move, and I ended up moving to Michigan to skate with my partner currently, Caitlin Hawaii, to just pursue my dreams. I had a conversation, much like with you, with another fellow Olympian, Ben Augusto, and he had said that like to be that next level of athlete, you have to be surrounded by greatness, and you have to be no longer like a small fish in a or a big fish in a small pond. I need to be
Mm-hmm.
like a big fish or a normal sized fish or just a small fish in my case in the ocean. And I need to be thrown in the deep end. And it was like terrifying. But I think once I did that, I started to learn how to trust myself a lot more. And then my journey was just pursued constantly by like trying to be chasing excellence and then at the same time chasing the dream of going to the Olympics.
Well, like you had mentioned like being thrown into the pond with the bigger
Mm-hmm.
fish, and it was almost like that's what your mom and dad did with you with the 14, 15, 16 year olds. It was like you were this
Mm-hmm.
younger kid with people who were better than you and stronger than
Yeah.
you and faster than you, and it made you bring your A game out a little bit, and it challenged you to go through that. Is
Yeah.
and I experienced the same thing with my I was put into a black belt class, even though I wasn't the black belt. And I was surrounded
Mm-hmm.
by people who were way better than me, way faster, but they were pouring their knowledge in on me because they had the
Mm-hmm.
experience that I needed to attain the goal that I wanted to achieve. When you hit on something that I love is that you said you didn't really like to compete. Is
Mm-hmm.
that because you were afraid of losing? Is it because you were afraid of getting hurt? Like you just had no interest? What was I didn't like competing part?
Yeah. So I think it ties into many different things, and maybe it's just sport specific to what we do, but I think like I didn't love the pressure of feeling contained. Now, competitively speaking, like we have rules and restrictions and things and routines to follow. In a show, you can do whatever you want. You can find a way, like if you fall, to make it entertaining to an extent. And I think that what I didn't love is the fact that initially was like this pressure of feeling like you had to deliver, and later on in my career, I actually found that I loved it so much because I like loved the challenge of recognizing, like right before our music played, for instance, everyone usually hates that moment, but like I loved it because it would be silence, and for like 10 seconds, 5-10 seconds, I would like be having like an internal dialogue and even battle of being like, okay, am I going to show up for myself right now, or am I going to really allow like all of the grind and the work of the last, you could say, 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 years, or like whole career, am I going to let that be the determining factor? Like, am I going to allow myself to get in my own way or not? Like, and all of that, like internal dialogue, that I loved because it was an opportunity for me to like show up for myself. And in those intense moments, that's where I was like, okay, like, am I going to do it or am I not going to show up?
And this is like within a 10-second time period.
Yeah. 10 seconds, because it's like from the moment that they would like basically call your name, like we're so nervous, we're so nervous. They'd call your name and you're getting to your starting pose. And like after they announce it, that like the audience is getting quiet, you're getting situated, you're getting set up. And in that moment, it's like silence. But you know that everyone there is watching you because they admire the sport, they're your fans. And the judges at the end of the day are volunteers, they're not paid. So they're wanting to be there. So I think when you're like sitting in that place, you're like, wow, I have all this power. It's so cool. But also like, am I going to show up right now, or am I going to chicken out? Like I can't. I mean, I can. Everything's a choice. Everything
Well,
is a choice. But yeah,
well,
go ahead.
and it's funny because you hit on you're an only child, right? And so it's like
Hmm.
you only are responsible for yourself, right? But
Hmm.
you're in partner skating. And
Yeah.
so did you ever look over and talk to Caitlin, or did you talk to Joylyn and you say, do you feel the same thing? Obviously not in that 10 seconds, but have you
Yeah.
had that opportunity in the past that you had those conversations? Like, what are you thinking about for those 10 seconds? Like, are you the one who is like nervous and dwelling, and
Yeah.
you're figuring out like, oh, I could get hurt. Oh, I could
Hmm.
fail. Oh, I'm going to look dumb. I'm going to fall down, or I could win, right? Like,
Yeah.
did you have that conversation where you were like, are you also the one who takes this 10 seconds and let's go, right?
Yes. It's so cool that you say that. I never actually had the opportunity with Joy Lynn to have that conversation because I don't think I was emotionally intelligent enough yet. But with Caitlin, especially over like the last 6 years of our career, I think that that was something we would talk about often. Actually, it was something that it took me a lot of work to become vulnerable enough to admit what I was feeling, because a lot of the time I was such an I'm fine, I'm good kind of guy, and everything's good. Like everything's good. It could be the worst day. I'm good. Everything's good. Rather than recognizing the strength that comes with like being vulnerable. And I think that for me, the more I was like able to express those things with her, the more I was able to let it go. Cause like there would be events where I'd be like, I am terrified. Like I am terrified right now. Like I would be backstage and my hands would be shaking. And then I would express it to her and she's like, it's okay, me too. And I'm like, oh, cool. And then all of a sudden, it's like that scene in Gladiator when he fights in the ring for the first time and he's standing next to the guy that pees himself. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
So the amount of times that I referenced that in the guys' locker room before, I was like, hey, like the good thing is we all know we're doing this together. And like I know the guy sitting next to me that's lacing up, or my partner, or anybody, every single one of us, we're taking and having the courage to go out there and step out there and do this. And I was like, you're just as scared as me in your own way. And I was like, when I started making that shift, I was like, huh, like it's terrifying, but also I'm not alone. And like being able to express those things with my partner, particularly, it was like, okay, I can like I don't have to carry that. I can recognize it and I can like let it be what it is and let that sit in my body how it wants to, but I didn't ever have to like fight that once I started recognizing it and honoring it.
Well, and you were able to let go of what you couldn't control, right?
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
just that one piece that's off of you. I love Gladiator reference, FYI. I love
Yeah.
that. Um, it's funny, but it's like when you're doing that and you have that conversation competitive wise, it for example, when I speak and people ask me like, when you get up in front of a huge audience, are you nervous? And I'm like, yes and no. Like it actually inspires me to go. Like I get that
Hmm.
that high. I'm like, yes, I get to be in front of everybody. I like the limelight, right?
Yeah.
And in reality, everyone in the audience wants you to succeed.
Of
They
course.
they don't want you to fail and fly. I mean, I guess
No.
it could be entertaining if you were a ham, but it's like
Hmm.
they want you to succeed. They want your message to resonate with them.
Yes.
And I think that when you're performing, people don't want you to do bad. They do want you to succeed, whether that's the judges. And it's like letting go of that as well is just that one more thing. And I love that you say that you're all in the same boat. You really
Yeah.
are. Like you look around and you're all, even though you're competing with each other, and somebody will go home with a gold or a silver or a bronze or just place or not place. It's like you're all on the same ship. And
Yeah.
I think no matter where you are in life, whether that's personally or professionally, it's like we all deal with rejection and
Hmm.
failure and self-doubt. And it's like we're all the same. And the way that
Hmm.
you deal with it is different than the way I'm going to be dealing with it. But at the same time, it's like accepting the reality that we're all in the same boat and just to let
Yeah.
go of what it is a huge thing. And I love that.
Yeah, it's so much what I like love to lean into when I was competing, especially the last 2, 3 years. And also I think just the way that I coach too is recognizing that like when you there's like a big difference of being in control and controlling. And when I'm trying to be controlling over my situation, my performance, or anything, most of the time it doesn't go the way that I want it
Mm,
to, versus like I'm in control. I can only control like what I can produce. And then you start to learn to trust yourself so much more and recognize the things that do happen are happening for you and not necessarily to you. Like,
mm,
oh my gosh, this has happened to me. It's like, no, it's like happening for me, whether it's good or bad. And everyone at the end of the day, in my opinion, is like experiencing their own version of this life literally as we do it. And I think that's so fascinating because, like you said, everyone's dealing with things differently. And that was like such a driving force for me when I competed too. It's like I really strove for greatness in a way that I loved winning. Like winning was so fun. It felt so great and like very small in terms of validation to what I really was driving for. And I really loved when I was able to perform with Caitlin and create moments. And I think because like referencing how people are always operating on top of so many other things in their lives, I think when I got to perform and really when I was super present and honest with who I was in that moment, and sharing that with Caitlin, I always loved the opportunity that I felt like I could connect with so many people in an arena or on a TV screen that I gave them the opportunity to take a little mental break. That if they could join me into like the place that I would go to, it's like when
Hmm.
you watch a movie or an action scene, you're not thinking about debt or the bills or the things that you've done that you may be shameful or guilty of. You're like, I'm so in this.
Hmm.
And I think that having that ability to share with other people was something that I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be able to give that to people in like a powerful way or whatever. But I loved it for myself and I knew how good it felt for me that I was like, I want to share this.
I love
So,
that. Well, and you're a
yeah.
performer. Like you're in front
Mm-hmm.
of these people and you're showing everyone your vulnerabilities, but you're also there to bring out this relatability to people to join that experience. And I love the movie references because I love movies. But the other
Yeah.
thing is like a good book is the same way, right? If you can get
Yeah.
into a good book or a good movie, it's like you get lost in that. And
Yeah.
when people can be drawn into the Olympics. I mean, we just watched the Olympics last week. They
Yeah.
finished up, and it's just like you get drawn in, even though you're not there. I felt like I was part of it, and you feel
Yes.
it's like when you're watching a movie and they have to hold their breath because they go underwater, and you're like, and you just find
Yeah.
yourself doing that and watching the athletes perform. You're like, you're
Yeah.
just tensing up and you're like being
Yes.
part of them. And I can only imagine what might be going through your mind when you think about that. Like people are watching me and they're on the ice with me. They're
Mm-hmm.
holding Caitlin's hand with me. They're throwing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just amazing an
Yeah.
experience.
It really was and really is. And I think that it's so special. And I think that like with that is like so much power in that vulnerability and all of that. It's honestly so amazing. I loved it.
Well, I want to go back really quick because you had mentioned like becoming an Olympic athlete. You thought maybe if I could do that, it might unlock this new uh like uh, platform to meet with my mom, right? Like,
Hmm.
did that occur? Because you didn't get into the Olympics right away. It took more than one time.
Yeah, it
Can you
did.
hit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was so interesting because again, like I mean, everything is so interesting at this point, but I think that for me, like the first Olympic trials, we were fourth, and we were the first alternates, which was obviously a very hard like pill to swallow in terms of like being almost there, and being good enough to almost make it. And I think that we had a very challenging as most teams and athletes do, but like a particularly challenging career when it came to injuries and performances at the right time and all of those things. And I think a lot of it came down to not being ready enough to absorb what would come next once we were getting to that point in our life. I'd say like it did create a new level of connection with my mom and I, but not nearly as big as I thought it would. I thought it gave me so much more. Um, Actually, like it was the belief that I needed in myself, and I think because I was always almost there. Like for 5 years, I was in fourth place with Caitlin. We were always in fourth at our U.S. national championships, which meant we were always first alternates for every event, which means we were first alternates for every championship event, a world
Stand by,
championships,
stand by, stand
standby
by.
always. And it's like you're almost always good enough, right?
Hmm.
So you're like the 98% of almost being that 100. So when it came down to like we were senior, our senior level, we were senior for 10 years. Our first 4 years we were fourth place, and then the end of that 4 year cycle was the Olympic trial where we were fourth place. Now we went for the next Olympic cycle, and now we were third place, we were third place, we were third place, and it was the Olympic trials. And during the Olympic trials that summer, Caitlin had a serious injury, and she ended up falling out of a lift with me, and she tore her ACL. And ended up getting a concussion. So completely detached. And this was in August of the Olympic year of Olympics being in March. Now, a completely detached ACL. I felt it like pop in my hand and then ended up hitting her head. Went to the hospital and took time off. 2 weeks later, after concussion protocol, she ended up getting back on the ice and was slowly progressing and had an x ray and everything, and nothing showed up with the knee. We all thought it was just a crack, and she was skating, and her leg kept buckling out underneath her, and it was still swollen. She's like, "What's wrong? What is going on?" Like, she was like, no movement of extension. She was able to support anything, and she's like, "What? I don't understand." And she's like, "It's just really sore," but thinking that it was just because we took a bad fall. Well, lo and behold, there was no ACL. So that was like a whole nother feat of us like, oh my gosh, like, wait, are we not supposed to go to the Olympics? Like, is this just not supposed to be a part of our life? There was a team that was fourth place that was really like pushing us at this point. And they were pushing us to the point where they actually were meeting all of the criteria. They were younger, they were healthy to be a part of that Olympic team. And we didn't compete that year until the last week of November. And all of the competitions in US figure skating count towards your Olympic trials the year of the Olympics. It's like accumulation of points. It's not just a matter of one performance at our US national championships. And they were like delivering left, right, and center. And we're like, oh my gosh, like this is actually
They're just
crazy.
chomping at your heels. They're coming
Yeah,
up
oh,
because
oh,
they're fourth
yeah.
and you've been fourth. You had been fourth for 10
Yes.
years and they're chomping at
Yes.
the bit. Okay.
Yes, they're chomping at it, and we were in a position where like, oh my gosh, like they actually might be getting this, and we could be in a situation to lose it. And they were delivering. So what happened was we ended up competing later that year and getting November, December, and getting the same scores they were getting. So at this point on paper, they could send a young, youthful team that wasn't injured, or a team that like they could rely on, which has been third, which have been like quote unquote waiting for a spot. So at our US national championships, it was like actually crazy because like we had a mistake in the first program, the rhythm dance, which ended up putting us in fourth place behind this team. And when I tell you, like going into the free dance the next day, I have never been so afraid in my life. Because I got to the point where I was like, okay, so like this is actually the culmination of everything that I've been working for the past 25 years in my like skating career. And like, what if I don't do it?
And it's all
And like
based on how many minutes? Like what
four
is this?
minutes,
4 minutes. Your
four
entire
minutes.
career and all your training is this
Yes.
4 minutes.
Yeah, and if we weren't injured and had a normal year, maybe it wouldn't have been as heavy because I would have been able to rely on it. But it was very much like, okay, this next 4 minutes can define. I mean, it won't, but it's going to define, in my perspective, like, was it even worth it? Now, you can live a very successful life without being an Olympian, but in my perspective, I was like, I've almost made it so much, so
Hmm.
many times,
Hmm.
and now I'm at a point where like, okay, am I going to show up? And then I remember looking at Caitlin like right before we stepped the team before us was skating, and we like looked at each other, and then I just like said to her like, what if it's better? And she like looked at me. I was like, what if it works out? And we just like laughed for a second. And then instead of being like, what if it doesn't? I was like, what if it does? And then we got on the ice and like the arena was silent because they knew
The
like they've been
pressure.
silent arenas and they just knew, and everyone was like, whoa. And that's like when the moment like the music before the music started, like there was like a little like,
10
all right,
seconds.
like, yeah, that 10 seconds. And it was just like so intense. And we like looked at each other, and like you can't see it on the video, but you can go back and my hand is like shaking while I'm holding her face.
Mhm.
And like then we hit our end pose. I don't remember the program. It was like full flow state, but I remember the last like 5 seconds of the program, not 10 seconds. We like looked at each other. We were almost done. We looked at each other. We were like still in it. But the last 5 seconds, we were in our last lift, and I started laughing because I was like, so like, no way. Like, no way. And I remember like tearing up a little bit and even like reliving it and re-talking about it now. I'm like, wow, that no way moment. And she was laughing too because it was like, holy like I just actually showed up so much for myself. Like I just showed up, and like I looked at her, and on the slow-mo or on the kit like the video of it on the performance on YouTube or whatever, you can like see us like look at each other, and like I put my hands on my knees, and like we like look around, and I like point to the arena, and every single person's on their feet, like people are crying, and she starts bawling, and I was like, I went to her and I was like, it doesn't matter now. Now it does not matter if we make it or not, because I was like, at least we know after like the season of, she's like, her knee was completely KT taped up, like it's fully detached still, her ACL. The Olympic committee was like, there's like no way that she's going to be able to do this. Like, you need an ACL, but she did so much rehabilitation on it and like built everything around it so strong. We were like uphill battle on an icy slope fighting against the wind, and we were like, no, we're gonna show up, like do it, boy. And we were like, for real. Like, it was one of those moments where we were just like, I literally remember looking at her like, it has no effect if we make this or not because of that moment. And then everything else on that was just like icing on the cake for us. It was like, great, we made the team. Oh my gosh, we did it. And now we like, I got to love every moment of the next 3 months, like training for the Olympics. This was an Olympics during COVID. Like, it was,
Hmm.
everyone's like, this sucks. And I'm like, oh, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't get to celebrate with my parents until after the Olympics. Like, I didn't get to give them a hug or anything because we were in Nashville and they had a completely open to public viewing of the event. And there was like so many skaters withdrawing because of COVID. And it was just like everything that you could think would possibly go wrong was going wrong left, right, and center. And all we had to do was just like, all we had to do. We just kept having to like internalize being like, we got it. Like, we can do it. This, like, it's all like outside noise trying to get in. And it's like, if we let it in, then it's gonna just completely destroy everything we wanted to. And for us, it was just such a life-changing moment for me to like experience that. And from that moment, like, I remember finishing that free dance and then going to the Olympics, which was like an unreal experience, and then finishing the free dance at the Olympics. I like Caitlin, we finished one program and Sean White was watching. And she's like, oh, we're Olympians. I'm like, hold on, let's finish the event. I'm not trying to get a withdrawal by it. Like, let's finish. And then after that moment, my life absolutely changed because, like, for so long in my whole career, was I almost good enough in my perspective. I was
Hmm.
always almost it.
Like
And
an
then it
imposter
wasn't until
syndrome.
so much, and so many people were always telling me, you can do it, you're gonna do it, like, it's good, like, believe in yourself. And I was like, right. But like, I, again, just always uphill battling. And it wasn't until then I was like, now, like, literally, I'm so busy, like you alluded to at the beginning of the podcast, trying to find this time. I'm so busy because I believe in myself so much. I'm ready to take on every single challenge that comes my way. And I accept so many offers of just like, let's try it. I'm game. Because like, the worst that's gonna happen is it's gonna be a no.
Hmm.
Like, the worst that's going to happen is I'm going to be told no.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, okay, but like, what if it's not? And that's like, ever since that, before I said it to Caitlin, like at our Olympic trials, like, what if it's better?
Hmm.
Because like, I'm going to psych myself out so much faster than I'm going to be like, I mean, again, it's like two letters and yeah, it can be painful at times, but like, what if it's better?
Hmm.
So, like,
I
navigating no,
love
right?
that. I love, well,
Right.
and I think that we all do that differently, right? And I think that it's like with me, and I will relate it to like a competition. It's like when you get up, the entire week you're nervous and you're anxious and you have the butterflies, and it's like even though you've been training and you're ready, and then you show up that early morning, you don't want to eat, and you have this
Mhm.
competitive
Yeah.
edge, and just like it's just you and the other opponent, right? And so it's like you
Mhm.
stand up there and you're just, am I gonna get hurt? Am I gonna fail? Am I gonna lose? Am I gonna look stupid in front of people? Uh, or could I win? Could
Yeah.
I win? And if you think, yeah, I could, it just completely removes things like how awesome would it be if I win? Right? Because it's just a
Yes.
game, because there's gonna be another competition, there's gonna be another tournament. And it's
Yeah.
like at that point, it's like, oh, the worst thing that could happen is I just don't win. Right. But the
Yeah.
best thing that could happen is I win. And then I
Yeah.
gain that confidence. And it's like moving on. Would you say, and I kind of heard you say it, is that you changed after that?
Yeah.
Is that something, that experience of being able to tell yourself, I've gone through the worst thing that I could possibly do? Self-doubt.
Yeah.
I've gone through every scenario. I don't make the Olympic team. I hurt. Caitlin doesn't get healed. You're going through that. You've gone through the worst thing that you possibly could. And now do you see life differently? Like everything could be, I could succeed
Yeah.
at anything that I set myself out on. Anything.
Yeah. It's so interesting you say that because like, so many people talk about how the Olympics is such a life-changing experience, and so many people talk about like there's a huge Olympic crash afterwards, which I do think a lot of athletes experience. I think for me, I have never experienced it because now I see everything differently. And I was always like a happy person. I was always like I said, everything was great. And I was emotionally aware to an extent, even before the Olympics. Now I'm like, yo, like the worst that's going to happen is it's going to be no. And like, it's terrifying, like what rejection and all of those things can feel like, and not feeling like you're good enough, or not feeling like you're deserving, or all of those things, and the stories that we'll tell ourselves because of no.
Your own
That
worst enemy.
literally own worst enemy. And now, just like in terms of success for myself from that moment of competing at the at our nationals, like the Olympics was a great experience, but it was more the nationals experience for me, which was what the turning point was, because that was when I got it. Like
Mm.
that's when I was like, huh, now. And then after we finished at the games, I was like, okay, I'm so done. I'm so done living my life with like any questions of like, should I, is it, I don't know, like I don't have room for that. And I was like, I now move in a space where I'm like, you know what, I'll know if it doesn't feel right, like no, that's a no, I shouldn't do that, versus like, well, I'm gonna try to convince myself yes or no. It's like, no, no, like you got it. Like let's do it.
Hmm.
I'm down. And like I've created a business now with my one of my good friends who actually won the Olympics, Nathan Chen, and we like talked a little bit about it. And then it wasn't until after the Olympics I was like, yo, let's do it. Let's jump in. And now we like run seminars throughout the United States. It's called Your True Step. And we did our first one in Seattle in June and one in Detroit, and we had over 100 people there. And like it was just amazing. We just like jumped in, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I was like, I Googled stuff, I used ChatGPT,
Yeah.
and I'm figuring it out, and using the premise of like finding yourself and being your truest self through movement and all of those things. And I think that that's like the premise of it. But at the end of the day, like it could be so terrifying, and I could be sitting here talking about, I don't know what I'm talking about, or I could be like, let's find out. Let's like learn and let's explore like what opportunities show up when I put myself in a difficult or uncomfortable position.
Well, and you by taking risks, that's the only way you're going to grow. That's the only way you're going to
Yes.
improve and get better, and the only way you're going to make the Olympics. And it's almost like it's interesting, but it's like confident. I don't think that we're born confident. I think that
Mm-mm.
confidence comes from experience of
Yeah.
failing and being rejected and being told
Yeah.
no. And it's like it just makes us that little bit more strong, like,
Yeah.
moving forward. And it's like I love that you said it wasn't the Olympics, it was the nationals that
Yeah.
was that switch, but that had come from being fourth for so long. And it was like
Yeah.
you put so much effort. Nobody sees that. Everybody says, oh, here's an Olympic athlete. But it's the confidence came from
Yeah.
all of those failures, all that rejection, all that self-doubt, all that talking. And then one day it clicks and you're like,
Hmm.
no, I what's the worst thing that can happen? I can
Yeah.
we can win, right? I
Yeah.
love that. If you were to get on an airplane right now and you get
Hmm.
on and you sit down and you sit next to your past self,
Hmm.
what's the one thing that you would tell yourself to overcome or be better?
Um, I think the one thing that I would tell myself is, uh, oh, it's so good. Um, I think I would really just say trust yourself. And I think that you say confidence a lot, and I love the use of confidence, and I think that very much aligning with what you're saying. I think confidence comes from experiences, and I think that it's the same aligned with trust. And I think that when I trust myself, like when you trust your parents or a relationship or really yourself, like you don't have questions or have doubts. Like when you drive from A to B, you don't question, like most of the time. Once you're used to it, you trust that you know how to drive. And I think that we create so much space for doubt and not having that trust in our experiences or our ability to manage things. So I think that what I would do is I would just really try to reiterate being like, just trust yourself, and like let that be as loud as it can be, because I could, I mean, trust that you're enough, like trust that you know how to show up, trust that. And it's like really at the end of the day, like when you're showing up with your truest authentic self, I think that like that's when you really are sitting in trust. Like you're like, yo, I'm enough. I'm good. You trust that you're gonna be able to do this thing.
Well, I believe in you. I do.
Thank
And that is like wait from you being a kid. It was just like
you.
go boy. Like, I know you can do this.
Oh
I
boy.
know you can do 100 nonstop push-ups. Just do it. Just do it. And it's just
Just
like
do it.
you have that drive, and I admire that. You
Mhm.
would kind of hit on it that you started a business, but where can people find you now? And what's your Olympic goal? Like, are you going to go into the Olympics again? Are you doing your own business? Like, give us a little snapshot of where people can find you if they want to learn more about you and follow you,
Mhm.
and what you're doing.
Well, for sure, contacting just through Instagram. Like I have my handles just at Jean-Luc Baker, and I'm on Facebook and Twitter as well. But in terms of like what Olympic experiences look like, I think now I'm much more in a coaching role. I think that I could have done and I still could do more when it comes to competitive skating, but I think that now I'm so curious about what other things I can create and like how I can hopefully um just like you did with me, like inspire and motivate and just mentor younger athletes into hopefully finding lessons out faster than I did to hopefully then make them the best version of themselves that they can be and having them learn that they are enough. And I think that um that's like the biggest thing with the company that I made with Nathan Chen. It's really just like kind of facilitating that space for athletes and people really of all ages to recognize that like when you lean into who you are and not a fabricated version of who you think people want you to be, it's like amazing how life just works for you. Like you can work hard, but things just work. Like people come into your life, people leave your life that aren't facilitating, that shouldn't be there really. And I think that it's just phenomenal when you lean into just who you are and it's hard to figure out who that is.
Mhm.
But if you can pick up on signals, your body starts to be like, oh, that doesn't really feel right. But you're like, no, but it's cool. Like, I mean, I did it. I did it for so long. I'm in a judge sport. I value myself off of the nine people on the other side of the wall giving me a score. Like I
Mhm.
let a number dictate my self-worth, which was so ridiculous for so long. And I think that that's why we really leaned into trying to create this company was Nathan's success. I mean, he won the Olympics in 2022 and he was like, whoa, like the more he just did him and he was like, this is who I want to be and this is what I want to do, whether it's like a salmon against stream of what people would think in the sport of figure skating, like that's when things got real.
Mm. I love
So
that.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
And I will tell you right now, if I was to give you advice as a coach,
please love that.
that would be the fact that I didn't do anything for you. That has
Mm,
always been inside of you. I just
mm,
showed you how to reveal yourself. That was it.
yeah,
And it was like
I agree.
I didn't make you do the push-ups, boy. You did them. You did all the
Yeah.
running. You did all that. I just showed you a path and you did it on your
Yeah.
own because that's always been inside
Mm,
of you. And I think that the people that you work with, you just have to show them their own value and show them
hmm.
how how powerful they can be because every one of us has it's our differences that make us so special, right? And every
Yes.
one of us has something to offer in this world. And it's like
Hmm.
having people say it's okay to show your differences and be special. It's okay.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's all I did with you. And you took it for a
Oh,
run, boy. And I'm so proud of
I
you.
ran with
And
that.
well, I am proud of you. I am proud of your accomplishments. I cannot wait to hear more about you. And I thank you so much for being on here and basically navigating your no on here with me and being
Yeah.
a part of my life, boy, because I look up to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Blue. I really appreciate it.
Well, I will
Thank
be in
you.
touch. All right.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.